Testified several times already this morning that you have, I'm going to quote you now, rigorous screening and vetting in place. Rigorous is your word for Afghan evacuees, refugees who have tens of thousands of them who have been brought to this country after the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan that this administration conducted, historically disastrous, I might add, in which 13 American service members were killed, including one from my home state. Hundreds, maybe thousands of Americans left behind to the enemy, where they still remain. It's your testimony that rigorous screening and vetting has occurred. So I assume that you mean by that at least the standard refugee screening process is, if it's rigorous, it's at least the standard refugee screening process. Is that correct? Am I right about that?
Senator, I do think it deviates from the refugee screening, but we have taken steps to make sure that the program is indeed rigorous, and I use that term advisedly.
Yeah, I noted that you use it advisedly. It deviates, though, from the standard screening procedures. You're conducting in-person interviews of all of the refugees per the standard procedures. You testified that 100% of these people have been screened and vetted. So you're conducting in-person interviews per the standard procedures of all of these refugees?
Senator, our U.S. Customs and Border Protection personnel have physical contact and question each individual at the port of entry. If there is any question with respect to that individual, any derogatory information or any question that bears on the individual's safety, the safety of the American people, that individual can be placed in secondary.
Well, wait a minute. That's not my question. My question is, are you conducting the standard security procedure? Is the standard screening procedure for refugees is they are given an in-person interview to find out, for example, if they're a terrorist. So you said 100% of these evacuees are screened. Have they all been given in-person interviews per the normal process?
They have not all been given
Why not?
interviews because we have to be mindful of the fact that we were in an emergency situation to evacuate U.S. citizens, lawful permanent residents, special immigrant visa holders, and others who have...
And what percentage do those, the special immigrant visa holders and American citizens, what percentage of the total tens of thousands did those constitute?
I have that information for you. If you'll give me 1 minute.
The answer is it's an extremely small percentage. I mean, it's maybe a few thousand out of 60,000 who have come to this country. So my question is, why are you not conducting in-person interviews of the people who have been brought here to this country? Don't you think that's dangerous?
I do not, Senator. I think that if, in fact, there is information adduced that gives any cause for concern, number one, the individual is not brought to the United States.
Well, wait a minute. When you say that, I just want to be clear about this. When you say any information, you mean if they are already in our database as a terrorist or a criminal or a terrorist affiliate, right?
Senator, we capture the biometric and biographic information of the individuals in the transit countries.
Right. And if I understand that. And if they're in our databases already as a terrorist or a terrorist affiliate or a known criminal, then maybe you're saying there's a fault, then maybe they get an interview. But what about, so that's fine, but what about the thousands, tens of thousands of people who aren't already in our database? The people who we don't know who they are, have they been interviewed?
Senator, what we do is we capture their biographic and biometric information. We screen
That's like a fingerprint.
A fingerprint, a photograph, biographic information, and we run it against our databases in our law enforcement, intelligence, and other holdings.
But you're not interviewing them, Mr. Secretary. It's not unless they're already in our database that you then bother to interview them. Do you know how many of the 9/11 hijackers, the 20 who tried to enter this country, do you know how many of them were given an in-depth interview by a trained official?
If I may walk through the process.
No, this is an important question. Do you know how many of the hijackers were given an in-depth interview?
I do not.
One. The answer is one. That person did not enter the country. The others were not given an interview. We know the outcome. For that reason, the 9/11 Commission recommended in-person interviews for all refugees and others brought to this country in these circumstances. That was 20 years ago. That's why the standard procedure is an in-person interview for refugees or visa applicants. Now, you've testified that you're not doing those interviews.
Not at all.
That they're not happening.
No, if I may.
You have just testified. You just said that they are not being interviewed unless they're already in our system as a known terrorist. No. That would have captured none of the 9/11 hijackers.
If I may, Senator, that is not, and I apologize if I was not clear. You are correct that we are not conducting in-person full refugee interviews of 100% of the individuals.
What percentage are you conducting?
I don't have that information.
What number have been interviewed?
What we are doing.
Wait. What number of the more than 60,000 brought to the country? What number have received an in-person interview before they came to the country? Because you said 100% are screened. So what percentage have been given an actual interview by a trained official before they come to the country?
When you're speaking of a full refugee-like interview, I don't have that data. I will tell.
Why not? Are you not tracking it?
No, I don't have that data with me.
Why? I hear you. I understand what that means,
Yeah.
but why don't you? Are you not tracking it?
No, we have data in the Department of Homeland Security. You're asking me what data I have at my fingerprints?
Well, why don't you have it? You run the Department of Homeland Security. Why do you not know who has been interviewed or not before they're brought to this country? By the way, are you following what's happening to people who've been brought to this country? On September 19th, a female U.S. service member was assaulted by a group of male Afghan evacuees housed at Fort Bliss. September 5th, a report from your office, the DHS, from U.S. officials at intake centers in Wisconsin identified numerous incidents in which Afghan girls have been presented to authorities as the underage wives of much older men. Other reports of assaults and rapes by Afghan men for Afghan girls. These are some of the folks who have been brought here because they haven't been screened, because you haven't conducted interviews. Don't you think that's a problem?
Senator, those individuals have been screened, as I spoke of previously. And let me
you interviewed them.
Let me share with you that if an individual violates a condition of parole, there are two things that can happen. They can be criminally prosecuted depending on the reason for their violation.
Mr. Secretary, my time's expired. I've got to turn it over to other senators. I just want to say the fact that you are not conducting the most standard interviews for tens of thousands of people brought to this country is astounding to me. And it seems to me you've not learned the most basic lessons that we learned on 9/11 since then. And the security risk is unbelievable. Thank you.
Incompetent people. We have incompetent people running our country, and our country has never been in more danger of World War III than it is right now. And we don't want to be the world's policeman. Under my leadership, our police and law enforcement knew that we had their back. We had their back. I gave them billions of dollars of excess military. We had military equipment in storehouses, warehouses all over the United States, and they didn't know what to do. They said, we can't give it to them. I said, why don't you want to? Because it will look too military. It will look too, this is a lot of it is safety equipment, you know, trucks that are armor plated and things when they go into riots. And I gave it to them, billions and billions of dollars, and it's had a profound effect. And it was just sitting there gathering dust. It would have been valueless over a period of time. But today I want to express our profound condolences to the family of police officer Kevin Cram, who you know, who was gunned down in the line of duty last week in Algona. You know all about it. Gunned down. We send them our love and our prayers, and we want every police officer across this state to know that they are heroes and they have our total support. These are great people. Our police officers are great people. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. Unlike Biden, I stood proudly with our friend and ally, the State of Israel. I kept my promise, recognized Israel's eternal capital, and opened the American embassy in Jerusalem. And I got it built also, by the way. Would have taken 25 years for somebody to get it built. I got it built very quickly. I also recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, something that they've been working on for 58 years. Planes would fly in every year. They'd come in and they'd leave. Nothing would happen. I got it done very quickly. And I withdrew the United States from the disastrous Iran nuclear deal. The bad part is they haven't done anything with it. And now Iran's making nuclear weapons. and this guy does nothing about it. That was the biggest thing I did for Israel. I ended the Iran nuclear holocaust, I call it. It would have been the worst. And we were going to make a deal. We would have had a deal with Iran within 2 weeks after the election took place. And when that happened, all of a sudden China went back to buying oil. I prohibited China from buying oil. I said, if you buy oil from Iran, you're not going to buy anything. We're not doing business with you. We're going cold turkey. A lot of people like that anyway. We're going cold turkey. They said, sir, we would never want to buy oil from Iran. Now they're buying millions and millions of barrels of oil, making Iran very rich. And we would have had a deal, good for everybody, good for Iran, frankly. We would have had a deal, but the election got in the way of that one. We did the Abraham Accords. We did so much, but we would have had a deal there, and that would have been a good one. But they've done nothing with it. They haven't done anything with it. They had such a great negotiating position, but they had no idea. But all of that was just the beginning. Here's just some of the agenda that we will immediately implement when we become the 47th president of the United States. This is a movement.